Okay, very good morning to all of you. And after almost 1 week, I hope that we have taken back to the class because due to some reason, some institutional work, uh, my classes were not happening. Okay, so in our last classes, in the topic, in the last class, we have discussing, we are discussing on the topic of multiple access. So if I just go through the my previous class in the last class, what we have done actually. So just a minute. Okay. So we are discussing about the topic of multiple access protocol, where there are three parts in multiple access protocol. First one is random access protocol. Second one, controlled access protocol. Second one is controlled access protocol. And third one is channelization protocol. So these are the three part or three things in our topic of multiple access protocol. So this is our topic was multiple access protocol, and in that particular part there are three topics. It is random access protocol, controlled access protocol, and channelization protocol. So in the part of this random access protocol, in this particular part, we have discussed about we have already discussed about this part where there are some topics like CSMS, CSMS CD, CSMS CM. Is this what is may I ask anyone what is the full form of CSMA? Anyone, what is the full form of CSMA? What is the full form of CSMA? Anyone?
Sir, code division multiple access.
Can you repeat?
Sir, code division multiple access.
The thing is, C for it is carrier. CSMA, it stands for carrier sense multiple access. The full form of CSMA is carrier sense multiple access. And in that particular part, there are two different sides, that is CSMA CD with collision detection, and another one is CSMA CA, that is collision avoidance. So CSMA, CSMA CD, and CSMA CS. So these were the parts that we have discussed in the particular part of random access protocol. Now today we are going to talk on the later part, that is our next controlled access protocol. So we are going to talk on the part of this controlled access protocol. So what happened in this part of this controlled access protocol? The stations means the PCs, right? Server, PC, this type of thing. So the stations consult here one with another one to find that which intermediate station has a particular right to send the data. So if we are going to talk about this particular part, that is controlled access protocol, means we are trying to control the whole scenario, that how the data can be sent, who has the right to send the data, how the with the intermediate devices the data can be passed. So the stations here consult with each other to find which station has a right to send a particular data. So here what happens, that a station, wherever there are several stations present, so a station cannot send a data unless it is authorized by other stations. So here in the part of this control access protocol, we can write that a station, maybe there are multiple stations, but a station cannot send a data until it is authorized by another station. So here the important thing is that the stations needs to be authorized by the another station to send a particular data. Until the station is authorized, it cannot send any type of data. So it is a simple or a generic term we can say. What is the basic of a controlled access protocol? Where it is we are controlling the whole scenario. So to deal with this, the generic term, whatever we have said, that a station cannot send any data unless it is authorized by other stations. So what are the procedures? How we can control this? What are the methods are present here? So in this particular part, in this particular controlled access method part, there are three popular methods actually present. That is, first one reservation, second one is polling, third one is token passing. So three methods that are present in our controlled access protocol, that are, first one we can say reservation, first one we can say reservation, second one that we can say polling, and third one is token passing. Second one is polling and third one is token passing. So these are the three particular parts or three particular methods that is present in our controlled access protocol: reservation, polling, and token passing. So let us discuss one by one the each method. So first, the part that is reservation. So what happened in this particular scenario? In the part of this reservation, so what is happening in this part, the reservation? So suppose a station is trying to send a data. A station is trying to send a data. So before sending a data, each station here needs to first authorize, right? Until it is authorized, it cannot send any data. So when the stations is trying to send a data, before that, the stations need to make a reservation of the medium. The reservation of the medium means by which particular path, by which transmission medium path, the data will be sent by the station, but sender station we can say. So before sending the data, the sender stations need to make a reservation on the medium. So the very first thing is that the path, the transmission medium that needs to be choose first, that needs to be reserved. So means suppose you are going to in a restaurant, a popular restaurant, and to get a seat, to get a table on that particular restaurant, what we need to do, it is popular nowadays that we need to book a table via that particular website from the particular app or the of the restaurant or the app of the restaurant, or we can say there are several like Zomato, Swiggy. But for any of the particular app or from the website direct of the particular restaurant, we need to book a table. So when we are arriving there, we don't get any trouble. We have our seat ready. So something like this, that when we are trying to send a data, we need to reserve a particular medium. The station, the path needs to be reserved by which or by which path the data is going to be transmitted. So here the thing is time. The time is divided. The time is divided here into the intervals. It is present. The intervals it is there. So each path, each transmission medium, the interval is divided. The time is divided. Now, when each interval, a reservation frame presides with the data frames, means when the data frame is actually going on that particular medium, a reservation frame needs to be attached with that particular medium, so that when it arrives to the transmission medium, no trouble will be there. Means it can understand that the transmission medium can understand that yes, this particular time slot is reserved for this particular station. So the thing is, first we can say, if I write one by one, the process, the first process is before sending a data, the station need to reserve the medium. So this is the very first process. When we actually send the data, the station needs to reserve the medium. After that, what happens that a time interval here, a time interval is looking, the time is divided into intervals. The time is divided into intervals means for what? So it is divided, the time is allocated to particular stations that is choosing a particular medium, because the medium, the bandwidth, the allocation of the medium, the use of the medium needs to be looked out. So if a station have no data to send, then by reserving it, there's no options, no nothing to use. So the several stations can access that, can reserve that particular medium, and in that scenario, a time is allocated to each of that particular station. Third part, we can say that when the data is trying to send according to its interval, according to its allocation time, a reservation frame attached with the data frame. A reservation frame attached with the data frame for what? So that when it arrives to the particular medium, it can understand that yes, this particular time slot is allocated for this particular station. So if we can say that if there is n number of stations are present that reserve a particular same medium, if n number of stations have reserved the same particular medium, so the reservations, the total path, the time frame is allocated, is divided within that n number of stations. So that n reservations mini slot for n reservation time frame is allocated, and each time any of the station is sending a data, that data, the reservation frame needs to be processed with the data frame, right? And each of the time interval is allocated to a particular station. So when a station wants to send a data frame, along with that, the reservation frames also need to be attached, right? So this is a particular first process that we can say this is the reservation process. We are talking on the reservation process. So means we need to reserve the path, we need to reserve the particular medium so that it can send the data, and when the station is trying to send the data, the reservation frame needs to be attached with it also. The reservation frame needs to be attached with it also. So this reservation frame, it is an important scenario here. This reservation frame, it is an important part, we can say. So after this particular reservation, the next part or another process we can talk about, that is polling. The second process we can talk about, that is polling. So what happened in this particular polling process, that our network, because all the scenarios are, we can call it a network, several stations, several PCs, several servers, LAN, WAN, a whole scenario, means considering it, we can call it a fuller network. So we are dealing, we are lying, or we are depending on the network for each and every time, right? So this network, in our network, the devices, some are our sender devices, some are receiving devices, some are intermediate devices that are helping for the process of the data. So one device here is designated or is needed as a primary station, right? One device is needed as a sender or primary station, one is as a receiving stations or receiving devices, intermediate devices is needed. So if we consider three very basic terms, sender, receiver, and intermediate devices, right? So one device is fully needed for a primary station, and other devices we can consider it as a secondary station. So if we go for this particular two part, primary stations and a secondary station, or primary device or secondary device, if I go by this particular thing, suppose primary devices and second one is secondary devices. So this primary devices, What is the function? What is the role of these primary devices? So if we talk about the functions of these primary devices, so what are the role of these primary devices, right? First, that these primary devices controls the link. The primary devices controls the links. So it is actually controlling the link. The link is controlled here by these primary devices, and it always the initiator of the session. Means we can say that the data when it is actually generated and in the process of transmission from the sender side, that we can say this is a primary devices and it is the initiator of a session. So always a session will be initiated by the primary devices. So we can say it is the initiator of the session. Third one, that primary devices is determined that which device is allowed to use the channel at a given time. So it is actually determining that which device is allowed to use the channel at a given time. So again, a particular time consideration scenario is here. So the channel to use the channel, to use the full bandwidth, full actually utilization of the channel, the time frame is divided to each and every devices, each and every sender station, so that the full use of that particular channel can be done. And for that, the time frame is allocated to each and every sender station at a given time. And the data exchanges, whatever the data is going to be exchanged, that is need to be done with the help of the primary devices. So the whole scenario is actually done or actually connected with the primary devices. And other part, that is our secondary devices, it only actually follows the instructions of the primary device. It is actually helping primary devices to successfully complete the data transmission. So secondary devices is actually following the instructions of the primary devices, the basic task. Now these secondary devices and the primary devices, with the collaboration of these two particular, the primary devices is looking all the scenarios, controlling all the things, and secondary device is just following the instructions of the primary devices. We actually following the instructions of the primary devices. Now here one particular thing is that if the primary station fails, because whatever we have discussed, all the things are depending on the primary station. So if anyhow, if any problem occurs in the primary stations, if anything happen in the primary stations, then the whole system, the whole process will be fault, right? So the primary devices, the whole thing is depending on the primary devices. So if any faults occurs, if anything happens on the primary devices, the systems will shut down or system will goes down. So at that, if the system goes down, the data transmission will not be happening. So another thing is also that is for a time frame, the sender is sending the data, maybe some time of means happens, the collisions may be happen, the collisions between the data is happen. So to avoid this particular collisions, to avoid any of these particular collisions, what happens here? Two functions are actually used, means to process, means functions means here the process that is helping the polling process is actually, there are two particular sub processes are present here. What are those two sub processes? First one is known as select and second one is known as poll. So these two particular sub processes are actually present, select and poll, that will be helping to avoid any type of collisions, to prevent any type of collisions. So what is the role of this select and what is the role of this particular poll process? First, let's talk about the select process. First, let us talk about the select process. So what happened here in the part of the select process? If a primary station wants to send any data, so primary station is trying to send a data. So it is informing the secondary devices that be ready, or it is informing the secondary devices to prepare themselves accordingly for the data transmission. So the data will be transmitted from the primary devices to the secondary devices so that it can passes and the process can happen and the data can be transmitted to which particular destination, right? So the select the primary stations wants to send the data and when it's trying to send the data, it informs all the secondary devices attached with it to get ready. So this is actually happened by the select function. This process is known or this process will be done with the help of this select process. The select process will be responsible for the transmission to become the readiness or to make ready the secondary devices to make secondary devices ready for the process. So this primary the task, the primary, the select function, the primary process, the primary is actually alerting, the primary station is actually alerting the secondary devices about that a transmission is going to happen or an upcoming transmission, we can say, by sending a select frame. So what happening? The primary station is actually alerting the secondary stations or secondary devices about a scenario that a transmission is going to be happen by sending a select frame. So a frame will be sent here. So the select frame that is be uh, written as cell. So this particular frame will be sent to the secondary devices to inform that a transmission is going to happen by the select frame, and that is waiting. Then that particular primary station is waiting for an acknowledgement from the secondary devices. So the select frame is transmitted to the secondary devices to inform or to alert for an upcoming transmission. And if the secondary devices receive that select transmission, then it will acknowledge it. It needs to be acknowledged from the secondary side. Then if the acknowledgement happens, if the acknowledgement is done, then only the said data is sent. The primary station is sending the data frame. And again, it will wait for the acknowledgement from the secondary devices. Then again, it will acknowledge or it will be waiting for the acknowledgement from the secondary devices, right? So we can say if I try to draw that particular scenario of this select process, how it is actually happening, right? Suppose suppose this is a particular station, right? This is my secondary devices considering as a scenario. Okay. So suppose this is my primary station. Okay, this is my primary station and this is some secondary devices. Suppose this is a device A and this is a device B. So what is happening here? The process, how it is actually happening? Okay. So first, the primary station is trying to send a select process or a select frame to alert or to inform the secondary devices, right? Means the first step we can write here. If I write a particular first step, what is happening? The primary station is trying to send a select frame to the secondary devices to inform about an upcoming transmission, right? So the primary from the primary devices, a select frame is transmitted to that particular secondary devices, right? So a select frame is actually passed here. So when this particular select frame will be passed from the primary stations to the secondary devices, then what happening? An acknowledgement will be sent. An acknowledgement needs to be done from the secondary devices to the primary stations, right? So an acknowledgement needs to be done. So here we can write that this is the second part. So here an acknowledgement will be done. So an acknowledgement will be done here. Now, when the acknowledgement is done, then then the primary station is going to send the data. Then the primary station is going to send the data. So we can say this is the third phase. And when the data is actually sent from the sender station, again it needs to be acknowledged also, right? So again it needs to be acknowledgement also. So we can say that this is our fourth phase, where some acknowledgement from the stations is again need to be there. So an acknowledgement needs to be passed, right? So again an acknowledgement, right? So the first part is this, second part an acknowledgement is done, third part again here, and lastly the fourth part. Okay, so this is a simple process of or simple function process of select, right? So that is the helping the polling process. There are two parts, select and poll. So the select process or select is going according to this scenario. So we have heard about this process, that is the data is sent and acknowledgement is needs to be done, and then the data is sent, and again for that particular acknowledgement, that is a similar kind of process that we have talked or we have discussed in our previous particular topics also, right? So this is all about the primary process. This is all about the select process, right? Now there is another process that is known as the poll process. So what is the poll process? So if the primary stations, here what is happening, that if the primary stations wants to receive any data, it also sending a data, and at the same time it is responsible to deal all kind of all the data transmission needs to be happen by that particular primary station, right? So maybe it can also receive the data. So what happens if the primary stations wants to receive a data? It asks the secondary station if anything needs to be sent from that particular end, means from secondary devices. So the primary stations also ask the secondary devices that if any of the secondary devices needs to send a particular data, needs to send any type of data. This is called a poll function. This is called poll process of the particular the process of polling. So when this particular situation is arise, when the primary station is asking some if anyone wants to send the data to the secondary processes. So suppose if any of the secondary process needs to send a data. So when the thing is arriving from the primary station, means the when the primary station is asking the secondary station that whether they need to send anything. So the first it will arrive to the first secondary process. Suppose considering these scenarios also, I will also draw the diagram here also. But suppose it is the primary station is asking this secondary devices, right? The primary station is asking the secondary devices if they need to send the data. So if it needs to send the data, there needs to be respond either in two scenarios. If suppose yes, I need to send the data, it is one scenario, and second one, no, don't need to send any data. So when it is happening, it will reply either in two forms, right? With a NAK frame, that we don't need to send any data. NAK frame, not acknowledgement. And the second one with a data frame that is needs to be sent. So if it is anything needs to be sent, a data frame, the data that needs to be sent, that will be passed. And if not, then also it needs to be acknowledged that with a replying frame of NAK. So NAK is actually meaning that no, I don't need to send any data. So if it is not, then no issue, and if it is, the data is going to be sent. Now if it is responding with a negative frame, negative acknowledgement frame, non-acknowledgement frame, then the primary station will ask the next secondary stations in the same manner, that the manner that the process have followed in the case of the primary, in the case of the first secondary process, that steps will be followed again in the second process. So if it is needs to be send again any type of data, it will reach the data, or it will actually returns an acknowledgement, right? Means again that not acknowledgement, if it is not, if we don't need to send any data, then a not acknowledgement process will be there. So if I draw a particular scenario for this particular poll process, right? So what is the scenario? So suppose this is my primary process or primary station. This is my first secondary frame. This is my second secondary frame. No issue. Now what is happening? The process that we have discussed is how the scenario is happening, right? So first one, it will ask the first secondary station that whether they need to send any type of data or not. So that thing will be asked by the poll process. That thing will be asked by the poll process. So here a poll process is actually passing, right? So a poll frame will be actually passed, not process. The poll frame will be a better term. A poll frame will be passing, right? So if it is trying to send any type of data, then it will send some data, and if not, then it will pass a non-acknowledgement, a negative acknowledgement. So here, suppose nothing needs to be passed. So in that particular scenario, a negative acknowledgement process is actually passed here. Okay, so a negative acknowledgement is passed here. Now, as it has nothing to send, then it will go for the next process. It will go for the next secondary station. Again, a poll will be passed from the primary stations to the next secondary station. So again, here a poll frame will be passed. So if needs to be sent anything, if any of the things needs to be sent, so it will be passed with the either the data. So it will be passed with either the data or with an NAK. So here also I can write this NAK, or it will be data. So it is the better term, we can say the NAK or the data will be passed. So this is the simple process for the polling part, right? So the process, the polling, and the first one we have talked about the reservation. So two process we have talked about. Then there is another process that is known as the third, that is token process. There is another process that is known as the token passing process. So here what happened in the part of this token passing process, that when a station is trying to send a data, or in a network, the stations are organized in a particular way that for each station we have a previous station and a second. So we can consider it as a ring type of shape. So in a ring, so it has a previous station and it is a second. It means one station is attached with two different stations. One station is attached with two different stations. One is the upcoming station and one is the previous station. So we can say the predecessor and the successor. So this in a ring type of fashion, this type of token passing process actually effective one. So we already have a brief idea or have a concept of this token passing process when we have discussed about the ring topology, where this token will be helping. Now we are going to talk on this token passing process in a large way, in a full descripted way, right? So this token passing process is actually considered in a ring type of fashions, and in the particular part there is several type of process, that is in the part of this logical ring, the physical ring, dual ring, bus ring, star ring, several type of ring topologies are present, right? So we are going to talk each and on each and every topic, but not today. This particular things, this particular token passing session will be discussed in my next class. So up to this, for today's class, we are stopping here, because if we are trying to talk on this token passing process, it will take a long time, because there is many points that we need to discuss in each and every point, because there is different type of several sub processes according in the logical ring there, and in that particular part there is some physical, dual, bus, the starring. But moreover, if we say about the token passing process, the thing is the same concept of that ring topology, where each of the stations have a previous or a predecessor and the successor. The predecessor is the station which is logically before the station, or before the means in a, if we consider a ring. So if we suppose just quickly draw a particular scenario here. So suppose this is a ring, and in this particular ring a particular station is present. Suppose one, two, three, four, 5, 6, 7, 8. So each of the stations is attached with a ring. And what is happening here, that suppose if we are trying to talk about a particular this station, so and if the ring is actually moving in this particular direction, if we consider that if the ring is moving actually in this particular direction, So this particular scenario, this one have a 8 and have a 2. This one have a 8 and have a 2 as a particular attached string, right? So this 2 will be known as the successor and this 8 will be known as the predecessor, because the previous one, the previous station is known as the predecessor and the next station will be known as the successor. So this is the basic concept. We will discuss the much about on this particular in my next class, right? So up to this particular process, up for this class, for up to this, we are going to talk, we are going to discuss here, nothing more, right? So I would like all of you kindly write your names in the chat box for your attendance purpose, so that there will be no type of trouble while I'm marking your attendance, right? So all of you kindly write your names in the chat box for your attendance. Okay. So I hope all of you have written your names in the chat box. So we will meet again in the next class after a few time at 11:30. So till that time, thank you all for joining into the session. Take care. Stay safe.